Welcome back to the second hour of the Velocity of Now. Me, your host Thomas Sheridan, here on Thomas Sheridan Arts on YouTube for this one Yule special one. Maybe we'll do more in the future. Only, I think I did one last year. I did do one last year when I channeled Liberace. So it's the end of 2015 is upon us. As I'm recording this, it's just past the sol. Actually, it is the solstice, and I'd say, it's that time of year where the light begins to fade and we start to become reflective. I often find it's not only reflective of the year that's passed, but also reflective of life in general, our own lives over that date, things we've been through and people we've known, and we've come to see the meaning the parts they played in our lives. And this brings us down to, well, around to the this 99 lunar cycle, which interests me very, very much, I have to say. Now, it's a tricky one because it's definitely for me a personal thing. Okay, it was not something I put out there to say that I had found the baseline starting and end position of this that works for everyone. This is what had worked for me. I put it out there, and lots of you said that late 2008, early 2009 was a very pivotal moment in your life. Things happened. There's great changes, great turbulence, good things, bad things, but it was a shift in your own personal consciousness and its relationship to the greater world in one way or another. And we're coming to the end of that period again. I've went over this in a previous video called the 99 Lunar Cycles. You can listen to that. I'm not going to go over it again. Now, what's the beginning and end date of this? I don't know. I'm just telling you that that's when a noetic insight for me resonated, and I presented some evidence as to why. Maybe it is a personal thing, maybe it's a collective thing, maybe there are soul or consciousness groups that register these same events at the same time in very similar way to astrology could be related to the movements of the stars and the planets. The same thing with maybe lunar cycles. There could be kind of astrological lunar cycles that people at different points in their lives connect into in different groups, depending on the person they are, when they were born, and what their life experiences, and they lock into the cycle at a specific date. But it is very commonly now seen that life changes, reality changes every 7 years, and we're this 99 lunar cycles. Okay, it's not exactly 7 years. It's towards 8 solar years, but there's a 6 month period on either 3 month period on either side, leaving a 6 month transition of flux. So, say from December 2009 to December 2015, it's not 8 years, but if you add the 3 months extra on either end, it brings you to it. So it's not, the cosmological cycles don't have hard and fast stops, just like conscious cycles don't have hard and fast stops. There's always a sense, a transition, even early people born in the early part of an astrological or a later part of an astrological sign pick up some of the attributes of the sign preceding or following their birth. It's the same general idea, but roughly it's a 7 year cycle. You have it in Jewish Kabbalism that there's an actual belief that after 7 years everything changes. And you have the 7 year itch and all this kind of other idea. And so I do feel very strongly about it, that it's happening in my reality. It's happening for me. Now, one of the things I've noticed is this. Well, you look around, there's lots of things. In alt media, you have things like the flat Earth madness, which I firmly believe is created by either an intelligence service group or a university research program to test people's gullibilities, to see how easily they can be brainwashed on the internet using neuro-linguistic programming and just using videos, and to brainwash people, repetitive mantras, to make them feel that if they question authority, they must take it to the absolute extremes in every case. So therefore, if the authority says the sun is actually pink with yellow polka dots, these people will actually believe the sun is pink with yellow polka dots simply because they have to believe they question authority. Now, the flat earth thing has exposed the alternative media for the shambolic mess it is, but it's also had a kind of a distillation effect in that it's also brought the people who we can actually use to really bring alternative thinking to the fore, and not just sheeple 2.0 who are all the flat earthers who'll believe anything put into their faces. We have the real people, the real meat now, who can bring it forward. The flat earth thing is symbolic of the end of this cycle. It's symbolic of the end of it. If you look at the end of the last cycle from 2007 to 2008, that's when the 9/11 conspiracy thing really, really took off. Now, 9/11, of course, is filled with like anomalies, but the conspiracies in general are bonkers. They're absolute batshit crazy. And the same kind of tests and ideas are used the same way. I mean, as the 9/11 conspiracy became less, they say things like jet fuel can't melt steel. Of course it can. It can soften it. And you're talking about buildings that each floor is the size of an acre, and you had a hole in one end and a hole in the other, and you had high speed wind flying through one hole and out the other, creating literally a blast furnace effect. That's enough to soften steel and cause a collapse in the structure. It's easily enough. So when that was disproven, it went on to everything from nanothermite to aliens attacking the towers. And it just got stupider and stupider. And so that this things always work in the cycles. I'm not saying there's anything that I'm not saying that 9/11 is not dodgy. Absolutely, it is. It's very dodgy, but I will never, go for any of the conspiracies or anything like that, because they're all either put out there by this, to create confusion, or they're absolute batshit crazy. It's enough to me to know that the people who, I have no proof that the neocons did it. At the same time, too, I know the kind of people that were in the neocons would do something like that. That's enough for me. And I leave it at that and I move on. Now, so the same kind of ideas happen, and right now the flat Earth stuff is kind of it's like a psychotic episode or a mental breakdown within and the whole alternative scene. Then you have people, it's scooped up many people. I mean, I would just say now that it is mainstream among the alternative media. And that's not because it's a paradigm shift of people waking up. It just shows you that mental illness and madness can spread in a psychic form across the video screen, or more accurately, the scrying device of a mobile phone, where the El Separato or the Terminator lies to you as your own reflection fires back at you from the screen, and you come to believe any lie you're told. And you have people who claim they're not flat earthers, but you can clearly see they're crypto flat earthers. They will say things like, well, I'm open-minded to everything and I'm putting the stuff out there. No, it's the easiest thing in the world to prove that the earth is round. It's very easy. You don't need to get in a spaceship or have a lens with a fisheye, a camera with a fisheye lens or not. It's, our ancestors many thousands of years ago who were eating their own head lice knew the earth was a globe. This also shows that we're actually becoming stupider as well. We're becoming stupider as a race, as a species for the most part. And Bill Nye, I believe, was actually booed in Texas for mentioning something to do with astronomy. I mean, this is how bad it's getting. And of course, the disease of Christianity is always at the root of all these things. Christianity, the Abrahamic infection, the virulent Abrahamic infection that spread from the Middle East into the rest of the world, is always fundamental to this ignorance, to this imbecilism that grows. And it's also, it is the baseline of all wickedness, as far as I'm concerned. Now, there's other signs that I'm seeing it's changing. I'm seeing people acting very hysterically lately, very paranoid and very afraid. I've also seen people lose their sense of reality and attack people who never did them any harm in the most virulent and vicious way for no reason. This is the rats on the sinking ship mentality. This is the psychic version of rearranging the deck chairs as the Titanic is going down, as an older version of consciousness is being cleaned out and a new version of consciousness is arriving. I'm seeing it in the arts, especially. All the no talents are all. I got it into their heads that they're all geniuses, and they decide that anyone who doesn't think they're a genius is a moron. Another aspect of this is suicides, and this is a difficult one for me because a friend of mine committed suicide this year. They've been very ill with cancer, so it was they decided to stop their suffering, and I and everyone who knew this person respected that. But there's been some other interesting suicides as well. There was one. Now, this is amazing, and I'm not gloating about it, and I feel great tragedy for the family. But there was one individual on the cusp of the last cycle who had declared war against me for some reason, had been gaslighting me, turned against me, and a person who other people had a lot of difficulty with. Um, I didn't dislike the guy, but I knew that he and I would never see eye to eye, but maybe we could work together. And he went to very personal war against me in a very public way, and he committed suicide not recently. And again, I feel terribly sorry that was his family, but he was the classic version of someone whose own ideas became so dogmatic and so entrenched that he got to the point where anyone who didn't share his great vision was his enemy. It was that kind of a thing. It was kind of egomaniac mania run amok. And as a result, he isolated people from his life, the ones who could actually help allow some part of his dream to come true. He walked away. He isolated them because they were not fully supporting everything he evangelically was obsessed with, and it just became a self-depreciating spiral of social isolation, failure, and eventually, for some reason or other, I don't know why, the man decided to take his life. And it's very tragic, and I would never wish that on someone, but to be honest with you, I probably saw it coming years ago, because his expectations of what he wanted from the world were so far beyond the pale of reasonability. He set goals to deliver that were 100 when but he would never be happy if he got to 9 on that scale. He always had to aim for it was 100 or nothing, and it was all based on this idea that he was some kind of social justice warrior, until he went out there into the margins and realized what William Cooper said, that most people, the sheeple, are exactly the sheeple, to use that term. I don't like to use it, but the sheeple, as he said, are exactly like how the Illuminati portrayed them to be, and they're not fit to be saved, and they don't care if you try to save them, they'll hate you. So I'm always telling people, don't become an activist or a social justice warrior. You don't save your own life, the ones you love, and yourself. These maggots are not worth it. They're not worth it. They'll just laugh at you, and they'll take what they can from you, and then you'll be left realizing that you wasted your life. But there's been a few others like that. I've heard a few suicides around of people, so it's strange times at the moment. It's very strange times. The alternative movement is dead. It's completely finished. All that's left now is some kind of, we'll hope for some kind of punk rock level emergence from it, where we'll have a kind of a post alternative media scene made up of people who don't believe, who won't fall for the flat earth nonsense, or who are actually looking at more complex and diverse subjects, in a way bringing it back to source. That's how I feel about things right now. Very much so. Very, very, very strongly do I feel this way about it. I even think I can remember at the height of the 2008 2009 thing, you had these groups like British Constitution Group, and they talked about the Magna Carta, and all these so-called freemen of the land saying that the Magna Carta would free the English people. And yet the Magna Carta is a document of enslavement. When they were talking about the commoners, they were talking about the wealthy landowners who were not directly related to the Anglo-Norman aristocracy. They were not talking about fellas like you, women like you. You were still a peasant. You were still a slave. That had not changed, and you had all these guys walking around the Black's Law Dictionary, talking about how the Magna Carta must be restored in full. I mean, it's just the ignorance is astounding, astounding. And of course, we had the suicide of one of the main proponents of that scene, John Harris. Another very tragic death. But again, he was part of. He created a world where there was going to be no resolution, where you said it, and the same with these. A lot of these, I hate to say it, but a lot of these flat earthers will end up killing themselves. They will end up dying or going to psychiatric or being themselves to psychiatric hospitals. I've seen it already. Their social circle of previous friends has all begun to abandon them. Even other truthers have abandoned them. It's just a step too far. And posting all these memes with these sort of almost like inspirational memes is not going to help. And they become further isolated until they wake up one morning and say, oh my God, what have I done? Believing this crap. And then even more delusional, expecting the world to, and that was my cat who just jumped across and knocked a bunch of beads I was working on, making a beaded necklace, onto the keyboard. So that's thanks, Jerry Wee. And so yeah, and so they will they've got to jump out at now. They've got to say, I'm a gullible gobshite. I got to get out of this crap now. Otherwise, what's going to happen down the road will be extremely painful for them. And they don't deserve that. As stupid and gullible as they are, they don't deserve that. As arrogant and nasty as many of them are, calling people ballers and all this kind of thing and shills, they don't deserve that. So jump out now and pretend you never were into it, and that's the end of it, because the end game is not going to be the international day of the flat earth, where you're marching down the streets and the people on either side of the street are clapping, going, our heroes were right all along. The end result for you will one day in a room with a single light bulb flickering, going, what the fuck was I thinking? And you remember that. So anyway, I was talking about the harrying of the North, and the Magna Carta, and that leads me to the harrying of the North, when William the Conqueror basically committed genocide against the North of England. And yet you have these people in the North of England celebrating this Magna Carta document, which came later from the Doomsday, later on, but with King John, but it came from the same lineage, the same oppressors. And this again, there will be no change. I see, like, for instance, here in Ireland, there's a woman that I know has just lost her house, following all this Freeman nonsense. She's in prison for Christmas. Now, all the parasites and all the vampires and all the scum who, with their Black Lord's Dictionary, who goaded her and fed her into doing this in court, well, they're never going to, they're not going to be there to help this woman. They're not going to put a roof over her head. They'll all walk away to the next victim, talking bullshit about a big change is coming. You see, humans have this capacity to make themselves delusional. Like, with my work on psychopaths, I know that I have reached, at this point, probably millions of people. Probably millions. And I still know it's never going to change the world. I'm very aware of that. Even with all I've done, I know the psychopaths are never not going to be in control. The best we can hope for is that all of us who know about this stuff can actually find a way to live outside it, so we're not being fooled by them into their games at them anymore. But it won't change the world. The world is not going to wake up to this and change tomorrow. Even though I've reached millions of people, it means squat. And yet you have a handful of people who think because they have a copy of Black's Law Dictionary, or they think the earth is flat, thinking that they're going to have this glorious day of resolution, this glorious day of celebration down the road, when they've only reached a handful of people, and anyone else has heard about them thinks they're lunatics. It's not going to happen, my friends. It's just not going to happen. And you've also made the fatal mistake once more of externalizing your own potential to an impossibility, to the ultimate straw man, the great concept that can never be delivered or fully proven. And that's the road to hell. But it's also what these opportunistic truth gurus all do. They create these things that are not real, from reptilians to flat earths to alien disclosure, to comets arriving, comet clusters arriving, to ascension to the fifth density, things that will never happen, though they'll never be ever have to be accountable for when they don't happen. They know that their previous devotees will end up being socially isolated, suicided, or just go insane. They'll never have to answer to those consequences, and a new generation of gullible muppets will come along to believe it. It recycles itself, but it's a dumb man's game. It doesn't work. You cannot be externalizing your own potential as a human being towards this idea of an outside, whether it's Barack Obama, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's aliens from another planet, whether it's some kind of great awakening, Russell Brand, you name it. It is not going to be delivered for you. You can only find salvation on your own path, through yourself. Stand up and fight for yourself. Don't stand up and fight for causes. Now, that's not to say people who might say have a problem with the medical industry or have a problem with something else, they can't make a film about it or make a documentary or a book about it and fight that way to try and, release this information to other people's minds. That's a different thing. But I'm talking about the ones who think, oh, all I have to do is, join Russell Brand's Facebook page or wait for the flat earth to be accepted, and then all my problems will be solved. Now, another issue with this flat earth thing is the inherent sexism of it. When I think of the earth, I think of a woman. I always have, and I always will. Gaia, it's a mother, it's a globe, it's a breast, it's a womb, it's an ovum. The flat earth is very Abrahamic in mindset, in that it squeezes that idea down into flatness. It creates a kind of a cosmic flapper. Remember the 1920s flappers? They used to wear things on their boobs to flatten them down and cut their hair short. It was kind of like the beginning of the destruction of the goddess or the feminine thing, where the planet is a globe and the natural forces are the male. I mean, this is shocking to me. It's shocking that women would support something like this. They're almost attacking their own womanhood. It's very Abrahamic, and that's why we have so many of these flat earthers are religious nut jobs, whack jobs, and religious cretins pushing this Middle Eastern nonsense upon us. This Middle Eastern nonsense has caused nothing but absolute catastrophic misery, not only in the Middle East but all over the world. But this Abrahamic flattening or destruction of our true nature, whether it be taking Gaia as the globe earth and flattening it down into a flat, sexless, anti-feminine earth, there's nothing new with these Abrahamic invaders doing this. A good example is the felling of Thor's oak at Gasmar, which is in Hessen, North Hessen, Germany, by Boniface. He became a Christian saint for doing this. The people who lived in that part of Germany, they worshipped basically the Nordic gods, Thor, Odin, Freya, and the rest. The Germans call Thor Donar, with the word thunder. It comes from that, obviously. And possibly there could be a connection to the Vedic thunder god Indra as well. Now, the oak tree, it was the usual communal meeting place and of these pagan heathen tribes, not just in the Germanic world, all over in Western Europe and Central Europe and into the Slavic worlds. Now, according to the story, I don't know, it's actually a fact, according to the religious facts, Boniface greeted the local militia, stripped himself to a waist, took an axe and chopped the sacred tree down. The god Thor, according to the local tradition, did not strike him dead with a lightning bolt. The story is then similar to Tara, that St. Patrick and his magic of fire, that the soldiers would then baptize the militia into the Christian faith. Now, the later stories, when the Christians take these things over, they actually tart them up. They say that the sacred Thor's oak fell with a single blow. There's a version in which Boniface is rescuing a boy from human sacrifice at the hands of the Druids, and sometimes Boniface even invents the Christmas tree for this occasion. What really happened was pure politics, and just like in many ways, all this kind of stuff from the Abrahamic world that's pushed upon us is always political. Like St. Patrick and the Roman and Britain governors, Boniface was financially backed up and given protection by a guy called Charles Martel, who was bringing the region under his control. Now, this guy was facing invasions from Spain and needed stability on the opposite side of the nation of the Frankish Empire, as they were divided into two, and he sought the allegiance by persuasion of force of the local chieftains. And he needed semi-autonomous allies who provided security for his northwest border in the Frankish world. And so this is the whole purpose. They sponsored the likes of Boniface to go in there, just like St. Patrick. They sponsored him to go in there and destroy the previous heathen faith, religion, cultures which had worked so hard and so well for so long. The Christianization of Europe was completely a political act. There was no spirituality, nor even theological aspect to it. It was purely a means of uniting disparate forces to destroy the previous culture in order to reassume Roman control within Northwest Europe. That's exactly what's happening with this flat earth stuff. These flat earthers, under the guise of their Abrahamic crusade, are either being goaded by or directly sponsored by the intelligence services to go in and assassinate what the alternative media had achieved to this point. Capture large amounts of audience of people who are finally fed up with democracy, fed up with social control, fed up with the same old nonsense, and then to rip it apart from the inside by colonizing it with the Abrahamic Christian cancer. The hypodermic needle they used to do this is the flat earth nonsense, using very powerful neuro-linguistic programming, and the drug, the solution in the needle, is the Abrahamic virus that has spread to us ever for the last 2,000 years into Europe, into the Western consciousness, should I say. So this is a classic. It's like what happened to the Druids and the heathens with this, and with Boniface and St. Patrick and all the other ones, and then they went to the Native Americans and to the South Africans, and it's happening with all the alternative movement. These people who are pushing the flat earth psyop are nothing more than Christian ministers, Christian missionaries. They're on an evangelical crusade, and the carrier wave, the means of delivery, is this flat earth nonsense. They want us back in the fold. You see, the same thing, they had people looking at things like astrotheology. Astrotheology delivered nothing. This is why so many of the people who were into the astrotheology stuff are now into the flat earth stuff. But the root on each of them in every case, is what I've been warning you for years, has been the Middle Eastern Abrahamic British Israelism, who constantly entrenched the Western consciousness among the sand dwellers of the Middle East. The sand dwellers. Now, I recently saw something where a guy had posted what he called the true Northern Cross, and he had made all the usual mistakes of these geometric geomancy guys, and actually plotted some kind of fucked up crucifix idea in the middle of Scotland without taking into account that you cannot plot along a map, along long distances on a map, between 2 points unless you compensate for the curvature of the earth. So he might be by default a flat earther too, I don't know. But the whole thing was that the Celtic Church were somehow the good guys, and when the Synod of Whitby came along, the Catholic Church stole the real religion from the people. This is absolute New Age cultology. Both the Catholic Church and the Celtic Church were both parasitic invaders from the Middle East who came via Rome. Both of them. Both of them had the same agenda to obliterate the previous cultures, and the only reason that they had a falling out was because of the date of Easter. The Celtic Church and the Catholic Church from Rome had two different ideas about the dates of Easter. Nothing else. And you know why? Because under the church law, under canon law, all tithes, that's payments to bishops, priests, dioceses, and cardinals and parishes and so on, had to be settled by Easter. It was the accounting date of fleecing the population. And this was purely a bookkeeping accountancy discrepancy between the Irish Celtic Church and the Roman Catholic Church. That was the only issue of contention. What time of year do we start raping the peasants of all their money and goods in order to settle the books for that year? Nothing else. Nothing else. And those of you who go, I'm a Celtic Christian, my name is Seamus Niculagan, I am a practitioner of the true Celtic Church of these islands. No, you're a dickhead. You're no different than the ones who go, I'm Father McGinty of the Diocese of Little Boys Upon My Lap. You're the same bunch. You're not, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. You're an invader. You're an invader. And you didn't come to assimilate, you came to annihilate. I have no problem with any religion, race, or any other culture coming into my homeland once it assimilates and respects the native culture. Christianity, in all its forms, came with the sword to annihilate. And that's all the conflict, the schism between the Celtic Church and the Roman Church was about. It was purely an administrative, financial, accounting system that had to be worked out. So those of you who are standing on a hill in Connemara in a cape, holding a crook, a bishop's crook, and calling and thinking you're a Celtic, a mystical priest, you're full of it. You're a gobshite, and you're betraying and you're mocking your own culture. And fuck you. And double fuck you on Christmas Day. We Irish especially were never ever meant to be Christians. It's so against what we are that why do you think to this day in parts of this Ireland Catholics and Protestants will still kill each other over each one's version of this Middle Eastern cult? It still goes on. It still goes on. You cannot be promoting that system that created Magdalene laundries, created babies for adoption, took babies off single mothers and sold them to medical companies. You cannot be a part of something that created the ancient order of Hibernians, the Freemasonic order. You cannot be part of something that created the Orange Order. You cannot be part of something that creates the Apprentice Boys Parade. You cannot be part of something that creates Opus Dei and feeds it into every power structure of Irish society. You cannot be a part of that Jesuitical or Lutheran invasion force and still call yourself an Irish person. You can't. You cannot. And you certainly cannot sit there and use that and then proclaim it as your badge of honour to fight the British. Because all you're doing is taking one foreign invader and wrapping yourself up in it to fight another. You've externalized yourself in both ways, and the last thing you've done is stood by your people. The last thing you did is stand by your people. I don't care what your God is. I don't care what you worship. I don't care if you don't worship. Do not be pushing it on me. And I live in a country here in Ireland where in 2009, Dermot Ahern, the Minister of Justice, after being paid a lucrative, shall we say, political donation to his party, Fianna Fáil, by the wealthy aspects of the Islamic community in Ireland, passed and signed into law a blasphemy law. So technically speaking, anyone can take my recording of this show, bring it down to the police station, and I will be in Mountjoy Prison in Dublin tonight in a holding cell waiting to be tried for blasphemy. And I hope they do it. I hope they do it. Ever since the law was passed, I've been goading them into doing it. I want my blasphemy trial, but they'll never dare to actually bring someone and prosecute them for blasphemy. It was purely a sop to Islamic fanatics living in this country. Another invasion force from the Middle East. Now, I don't care if you're Muslim. Again, don't be pushing your Muslim, Christian, Jewish, or whatever, Hindu, anything into law. I don't even want paganism into law or into government. I want religion and law. I want government and law completely, and education and healthcare and all the things that matter completely 100% secular. Secular. They'll never arrest me or anyone and charge us under the blasphemy law. They'll never do it. They would not dare have me on a stand for saying something like that Jesus was the son of a bored housewife whose husband Joseph probably preferred donkeys and goats or young boys over her, and she ended up having sex with a demon, and the result was giving birth to a zombie. They will never, ever, because that's interpretation of a story. But even if they tried that, they know that the public outcry would be enormous. It would be embarrassing and the law would be struck off right away. That's why no one's ever been arrested for a blasphemy law in Ireland. It was just purely a sop to one particular branch of the Abrahamic influx onto this island. And it sickens and disgusts me. I wrote a letter at the time and it's funny, it was 2009, folks. It was 2009. And I wrote a letter to the Irish Times, which wasn't printed, but the Guardian picked it up. Funny enough, the Guardian picked it up, and I signed the letter as, I think it was Mohammed Shapiro Crowley. Monsignor Mohammed Shapiro Crowley. And the journalist, the Irish correspondent for the Guardian, I was talking to me about it, and he said it was one of the funniest things he's seen. But that law will never be enacted. It's just purely a sop. At the same time, too, I don't think it's right to offend people who have religious. I would never walk down to a Catholic church or a mosque or a synagogue and mock these people or anyone. I would not do that. I would be totally against anyone harassing anyone at their place of worship. But yeah, it seems to be okay to harass heathens. Oh, no problem going after us. No problem. The statue of Magna Carta, the Irish sea god, who gave his name to the Isle of Man, was thrown off the top of a mountain, Benevenant Mountain, in beautiful place in County Derry, and was found by the British Army in pieces at the bottom of a hill. That was Christian fundamentalists who did that. And there was nothing, it was just like, it was vandalism, but no one ever spoke about it in terms of it was an attack on another person's religion. On top of Ireland's highest mountain, there was a gigantic Christian cross of the crucifix. It's on top of Carrauntoohil in County Kerry. I think last spring someone carried an angle grinder up there and cut the cross down. And yet there was all kinds of arm wringing and waving. Oh, isn't this disgraceful? Our faith has been attacked. But when the same fuckers attacked MacManaman statue and pushed it off the cliff in County Derry, people just thought it was a joke or an act of cultural vandalism. Nobody gave two blinks that perhaps this was an attack on someone's religion. And it's the same thing. They're still building factories and they're still driving roads, and they're still God knows doing what to stone circles and other sites all over this island, building fecking golf courses on them. And yet nobody is allowed to say this is a violation of someone's religious beliefs or spiritual tradition. No, and the irony of that is it's the truest spiritual tradition of these islands of all. And it's all part of the same continuum of Boniface chopping down the tree, St. Patrick and his sacred fire, and all these other nonsense stories of so-called Christian saints, from the bloody verdict of Baden, killing all the Saxons, the heathens, right through to the flat earth today. My enemy has been the same Abrahamic scourge that has attacked my culture, my land, my island, and even my alternative media that has been so good to me. They're following me around like the demon in the Bruce Lee movie Dragon. They won't leave me alone. They won't leave us alone. Wherever we go to explore alternative ideas, alternative lifestyles, the Abrahamic infection and its virulent carriers have to follow us after us and chase us down. They will not leave us alone. The whole history of Western society can be summed up in one sentence: Abrahamic religions harassing non-Abrahamic religions. You can boil that all down into that. Politics, religion, nationality, culture, everything. Everything. We can't make rock music without them telling us that it's sinful and it has backward messages on it. We can't create art without them telling us it's blasphemous. But they can do whatever they want from us. You can have these Abrahamic religions kill 1.5 million Cathars in the south of France. You can have them slaughter and murder heathens all over Europe. But if someone nails a teddy bear to a crucifix, they act like it's the end of the world. They have no conceptualization of their own fascistic ideology and what they've done to others. None. And they will not leave us alone. They followed us. The Jehovah followed us around on the Roman roads. They penetrated into the most remote regions of our lands. And then Jehovah and his agents followed us onto the electromagnetic spectrum. It's where can we run? At some point, and I'm at the point now where I'm ready to say stop. I'm ready to hold my hand up and draw a line in the sand, and I'm going to say, you Christian crusaders are not going to push us any further than this. We have reached our limit, and we're now going to draw a line in the sand. You're not going to push us off into oblivion. We've yielded enough. We've yielded enough. You've had your way for all this time. You've been protected by laws, armies, and politics, and we've had enough. You have no place. I'm not saying there's anything wrong fundamentally with your religion. I have lots of Jewish, Muslims, and Catholics and Christians and other friends. They're all better people than I'll ever be. But the fundamental aspect of the core of this, I can't even blame Jews, right? I will not blame Jews for this, because their religion is not a crusader religion. It's not it does not convert people by force. It's not evangelical. It's not apostolate. Leaving Jews aside, they've not done anything to me, okay? But Islam and Christianity has been very much on the forefront of attacking. Now, please go back to the Middle East and stay there. Please stay there. Now, I'm 44 minutes into this. I know I should be in a better form today, but the tour there will be more funnier, I promise you. Now, so anyway, that's interesting. I never thought about the 99 I still hope you find this interesting, by the way. The 99-year lunar cycle. It's 99 lunar cycle. It actually, we're back to 2009 again with the passing of the Blasphemy Law in Ireland. Maybe in the next few months we'll see that law struck off the books. I would love to see that. But either way, they've not prosecuted anyone. It was anyone under that law, and they never would, because if they did it to me, it'd be the biggest mistake they'd ever do. Because I would just absolutely do the Malcolm X on them. I mean, I would, it would just that'd be the last person they would want on the stand, and the last person they'd want giving press statements. It would be a nightmare. So yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about that. Was 2009. So again, it's showing that this lunar cycle is personal and maybe collective to groups of souls. I mean, so many of you, and not souls, yeah, souls are consciousness, but so many of you, have said to me, Thomas, you're absolutely bang on here. Late 2008, 2009, when I was a major turning point in my life, was a major a flip. Something happened, a crisis or a punch point, and now it's going to happen again. Now, as I said, it's not a prediction of doom. Some of you may find that by the time April comes around, you're on a wonderful new path in life. You may find a wonderful new relationship. You may have a new career, and things may take off, and it feels great. Others, you'll have a bad time, but none of us who seems to be affected by this particular rollover period will be left unchanged by it. Great changes are coming. Now, my attitude is that if we're aware of it, we can cushion the changes better. We can prepare for them, both psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, and so on. And there's no harm in that. There's no harm in that at all. But all around me, everywhere I look, this previous version of consciousness is being torn apart. The flesh is being ripped from the bones, and all I'm seeing now is the bones. It's almost like as if this present version of human consciousness is being excarnated at the moment. The flesh is being torn from the bone. We're back to the bones, but the bones will remain. And upon these bones, new flesh will grow, new possibilities will grow, and new paradigms, although I've come to hate that word, new opportunities. And remember, even if painful and depressing thing happens, don't see it as anything other than an opportunity for growth, for creativity, and for change. And I think that's the feeling I have at the moment. I'm ready for a change. I'm ready for something new. And in the third hour of the show, I'll talk about that, the dream stories, and we'll have a bit more fun than in this hour. Take care, and I'll see you on the other side of the break.